Kolein Carlson is an artist, counselor, and author. Her first book is Another Day to Love, Sunday Morning Ramblings, and it was published in December 2019. Her forthcoming book, which is a collection of poetry and essays, will be published at the end of May 2020. She is also working on a novel and is going to England to research on it this summer. She has been writing for as long as she can remember. She is the owner of Free to Find Pearls, an organization offering counseling sessions, workshops, and classes. She runs a private counseling practice, Finding Your Pearl workshops, and speaking engagements, intuitive art workshops, and is also a singer, songwriter, performing locally alongside her husband. Her first CD will be out soon. And Kolein was, in fact, my neighbor when I was in New York, upstate New York. And that was Rochester. And I often say that Rochester is one of the coldest places with some people with the warmest hearts. So, Kolein, so your book is known as Another Day to Love. So, and you claim that you are the owner of Free to Find Pearls. So where can we find pearls if you want to? Tell us about your work as a counselor.
Well, there's a saying, you may have heard it. It's called "The world is your oyster." What does this mean? It means that we're free to find our pearls. So pearls are pieces of ourselves. They're pieces that we've forgotten, maybe, that things that we weren't in touch with within us. Usually if we go back to our childhood, we can revisit our joys. And my counseling practice is actually about that. It's a journey to those forgotten places. I didn't set out to be a counselor. I don't really know what I set out to be, but I was happy just being a mom, a mother, a homeschooler, and a wife and a friend. And but there was this pull. Something was pulling me. And I had gone through great conflict in my life. And sometimes when we come out of that on the other side, there is important wisdom. And now I thought that it was time to share that wisdom with others. And I share it in my practice, my counseling practice, and at my workshops as well, and through my books. So in my early 50s, I went back to school and completed my degree. I had gone to 3 colleges, and ironically, Teresa, I started out wanting to be a journalist. Yes, and through personal reasons and changes in my life, and always an uphill battle, it felt like, I never actually got any degree. I went to 3 different I got my degree. I'm a soul clinic counselor and also certified in spiritual counseling. So how this all began is many people go through life and were harmed by dogma and doctrinal beliefs, pop culture, all sorts of abuse, and since children. And that's such a critical time. There's a pause. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. So as children, this is a critical time in our development, and I facilitate a place here in my studio where people can unravel those untruths about ourselves, things that people told us we were, and then we became them, and then we realize, oh, wait a second, maybe there's something else. And so we start there, and we get back to our joy. What brought us joy when we were children or even adults? We've omitted that portion of ourselves, and we've severed it right from our beings. But the interesting thing is that it's usually something very simple that we need to get back to, like a beautiful memory, or I have memories of my childhood with my grandmother, and that connection, those beautiful memories that we're in touch with, the innocence of daily living. And that simplicity opens our world when we start to examine that. So I'm also intuitive, like you, and I can read body language. So it's something that's innate in me. And through creative visualization and conversation, lots of questions, we can go on this journey of discovery. And it's lovely watching a person who is doubtful or troubled, or who has personal conflict, begin to live an autonomous life, like a butterfly coming out of a cocoon. It's very beautiful.
Okay, so well, I'm talking to a philosopher here. So, so as you said, you understand body language. So, is it difficult at times when you know that when you notice some negative vibes? When you notice some negative vibes from a person, do you find it? How do you deal with it?
This is such a gentle place. When people are ready to come to the practice, I talk with them a bit before they come here, so I get to know just a little bit about them. And many people are referrals, so their friend or family member has already had an experience, so they know that this is going to be a place of love and non-judgment. And so, yes, the dark matter does come up, and I love the person whole in the experience. So if they are sending out maybe some anger, I'll suggest that we talk about that if they would like to. But there's always resistance when people know for themselves that they need a change, even a small change. There's always resistance. So we just explore that resistance. And the goal is always to get to joy, which is very different than psychotherapy and psychiatry, because we examine more of our pain than we do our joy. I mean, we might eventually get to our joy, but to go to the joy first, that's something very different. It's very extreme for people. They laugh. They come in and they laugh. They go, what? This is counseling? And but love and joy, are beautiful companions, and we have that. Even, I was physically abused and sexually abused, and I still can find joy. Even in those times that it was happening in the past in my life, there was still joy to be had, which is really remarkable as human beings. And even in all the conflict that you have dealt with, there is still the simplicity of life and the simplicity of joy. So I just address it. We talk about it.
Okay. And so why did you choose to write a book?
Well, it didn't start out that way. I'm not a very good follower. I'll say that. Ask anyone, especially my mother. But I am devoted. I am a devoted person. So sometimes this causes conflict if you're not following, what another person wants or a group. So what happened for me is I began questioning the religious establishment that I was lovingly serving for a third of my adult life. And it was an awakening because establishments do not appreciate being questioned. They don't appreciate being examined for their motives. So I left. And and when I left, that was the most startling thing. I didn't grow up in religion per se, even though our country is based on Judeo-Christian values. I knew of religion, of course, but my parents and grandparents were really not a part of that. So I didn't know I was writing a book. In 2013, I began rambling, and my Sundays were free. Everyone goes to church on Sunday here, so my Sundays were now free. So I just started typing out my thoughts as a list each Sunday. I ended the list of ramblings. I did it on social media, on Facebook, and I said, it's Sunday, another day to love, happy Sunday. And, these words were never planned out. I just simply rambled my thoughts. Whatever thoughts came, I just rambled. And people began commenting and loving and supporting me. And a new community began to emerge out of that. I know people were also challenged by my words too, but words do that to us. It's not always a bad thing. But I'm also encouraging my sons to think deeply, critically, examine your words, your thoughts, your motivations, stay honest and true, and it'll cause waves, but the ripple effect can change the world. And as I wrote, I healed. As I wrote, I grew. As I wrote, I became empowered. And I discovered who I am. And I became braver as a woman. So in August of 2019, I was finished rambling. Already on a novel and a book of poetry. And I was starting to gather those pieces. And my husband said, your rambling's a book. And so I had to painstakingly go back for 6 years and gather all those on to Facebook. Yeah. From Facebook can you into my...
Okay. I think there is some problem with the connection. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So can you show us your book and show everyone your book? Okay. So, I remember once, joining you. You had organized a Super Saturday where you invite only women for a bowl of soup, and you have you talk. And there were women from all walks of life, and I was one of them. And we sat with each other over a bowl of soup, and you called it Super Saturday. And I remember your husband and your son had left the house that day. It was just only women in the house.
Yes.
So please tell us about this wonderful sisterhood that you have created. This is a wonderful idea. Only women, you sit and talk. So can you tell us something about that?
Yes. First of all, I love soup, and I love my friends. They come from all different areas of life, like you said, and living and purpose and determination. And they are a gorgeous mosaic. And, we are an extension of one another. And I love to network with people. I love to talk to people from different cultures and philosophies and, ideas and political backgrounds and so forth. So I decided for a few years, I did it in a row. When I started my business, I didn't have as much free time, so I haven't done that in about a year. But and as you know, I don't have a large home, so we're all sort of, kind of grouped together in these little groups. But I love to bring people together. I love people. And of course, if there's food and wine and tea and coffee and bread, we have an amazing gathering. And life is really simple. We make it complex. And I don't know, it was just a spur of the moment idea, honestly. Somebody's saying they can't hear.
Can't hear anything? Yuman, can you hear me? Can you hear me? You can't hear Kolein? Hello? Hello?
Hi, I'm here, but
I can hear you, yeah. I can hear Kolein, yeah. Yeah, so I think we just carry on.
Okay.
Okay, carry on, yeah. So maybe there's a technical smack there, yeah. Okay,
yeah.
You carry on. Yeah.
Okay, Denise is saying she can hear fine. Okay.
Yeah.
It could have been on the other person's end. Anyway, so I just decided to gather everyone, and I did it in the fall and the winter when the weather is not that cooperative here. So people are less likely to go out. And this was once a month on a Saturday, so everybody knew and could put it on their calendar, and we would come together, and it was really quite lovely. I love it. I'm looking forward to doing it again.
Okay. So, you wanted to ask me something? I mean, it's supposed to be a conversation.
This is the first time I've ever done this, so I didn't know how to do it.
Yeah, I'm a dinosaur too when it comes to technology. So, it's just, yeah.
I will introduce you to the people that are from my world. First, I'll let everybody know a fun story. So the reason that I know Teresa, her husband, and her two daughters is because I was having a yard sale. And in the United States, I don't know, do you do yard sales in India?
No, we don't.
I thought maybe it was just an American thing. So I was having a sale of just some used items, and her husband and herself and her children, that's how we met. They came to my table to look at some items, and the rest is history, as they say. We became friends. So I would like to introduce Teresa Rehman, who is an award-winning journalist and author, a wife and mother, and the managing editor of Thumbprint magazine. She has written 2 books. One is The Women of Manipur, and her most recent book is Bulletproof. It's a first-of-its-kind account. Bulletproof is the story of a female combat journalist impacts women, children, health, environment, sanitation, wildlife, and society. This book is a collection of rare human stories from one of the most underreported regions in the world. And I have a few questions for you, Teresa. So the first one I want to ask is, besides the obvious conflicts and hazards in these areas of your country, where you were reporting from, and your personal safety, what would you say was the most challenging aspect of sharing these stories in your book?
As a journalist reporting from one of the, most underreported regions of the world, to talk about your vulnerabilities, to talk about your weaknesses is something which was the most difficult bit. And these were stories which I had, they were hidden somewhere deep inside me, or maybe in some of my crumpled notebooks. And these were stories which I never told anyone, because reporting from a conflict zone has a fear factor that is real. And I'd be lying if I say that I didn't get scared at times. So, and then, the life of a journalist, we often read stories, but we don't know the stories behind the stories.
Yes.
What happens when a journalist goes to the field, and what are the things that they encounter, and especially when you are a female journalist within quotes. So I always say that you can only be a good reporter or a bad reporter, but it so happens that there are certain things that happen to you, and you have to get your story as a journalist, and you're not supposed to think about what might happen to me. So we just get our story and be done with. But then we realize that now when I think about it, 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, then I realize that I went, and you sitting there in the US, you won't be able to imagine that we literally went without any precautions when we went reporting. So it was much later that I realized, that I got to know that most foreign media, they have specialized trainings for journalists who report from a conflict zone or any hostile area, or even a natural disaster. When they go reporting from a natural zone, where even if they are going to report on an earthquake or a flood, so they are given training, and it's known as hostile environment and first aid training. But these are things which were unheard of for us. And as a first generation journalist, there were nobody, I didn't have any mentors. So I was just passionate about my work, and I went to the field, and I don't know, I was very passionate, so I had to get my story. So now when I think about it, if you read the book, you'll realize, and people ask me, why did you call it bulletproof? Because I call it bulletproof because in many ways I'm bulletproof. Or journalists like me, we are bulletproof. We don't never wore a bulletproof jacket. And say nowadays, many journalists, many media houses, they have started this trend of having a helmet or a bulletproof jacket. But for us, it was just the pen, paper, and our intuition. So it was a different world altogether. And maybe if you come here someday, you'll realize what we go through and what we've been through. And so I thought it was very important to write this narrative, and we need more such narratives from journalists all over the world. When you see the press freedom is curbed so much, and especially women journalists, they have an additional, they have other security concerns as well. So, it's very common to see a journalist being reduced to a statistic. Journalists are being killed, are being injured. It's very common all over the world now. So I think it's very important to have such narratives of journalists. And that is why I never thought that my life would be worth, talking about or writing about. And I'm glad that, this publisher decided to publish my work, publish my experiences. And I think someday some journalists would be inspired by this. And maybe the fledgling journalists, the media schools, the media researchers, they can learn something from my experiences. And I can only hope for something worthwhile coming out of it. And I would urge all journalists, to write about their experiences, because we need to preserve these stories behind the stories for posterity. Tomorrow I may not be there, but my stories behind the stories will be there. So that is the reason why Bulletproof was written. Yeah.
You should show it. Hold it up.
Yeah, but I think it will come in a mirror image because we are. Yeah.
It's backwards. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just started reading your book, and The one thing that was very striking to me is, and it really caught me off guard because I thought you were just writing about others, but you were laying yourself out there in the open, and
Yes.
And I felt like I got to know you so much deeper, in a deeper, richer way. Your vulnerability was really beautiful. Of course, that's what I love about connecting with people. But I was surprised at how much you really offered of yourself in it.
Yeah, it was very difficult to write about. Maybe when I was actually doing hardcore conflict reporting, then I wouldn't have talked about it also. Yeah. But now that I have come out of it, I'm more into research and more into writing books, and when I'm in retrospect, when I think about it, I felt that I feel that and there are many more such experiences which I feel that I should document, and especially lives of women. Yes. Women of different fields, women of different vocations, not just journalists, women doing different things, even homemakers, everyone's life needs to be documented. And
yes.
So I think we need more narratives, more people, more women writing. And Kolein, tell me one thing, do you think women make better writers, or do you think there's a sudden spurt in women writing all over? We see so many women writing nowadays. What is it? There was a time, maybe once I remember I had written about an organization that deals with women writing, a local organization. And they said that we had to really struggle to find works by women. They went to a particular household, and the family didn't know that their grandmother used to write. She had a trunk full of books, manuscripts, handwritten manuscripts, and nobody in the family knew. So they hunted for her, through her trunks and through her wardrobe. She was no more. But then they found that, these are like masterpieces, these are like poems, and these are beautiful writings which never got highlighted. And even the family members were not aware that, our grandmother used to write. But now I think we've seen a lot more women writing, and a lot of them in public space, and everyone knows about them. And I think they're also aggressively talking about their work.
Yes.
So do you think earlier people used to shy around, they were like, they didn't want to talk about their books, or they didn't want to, or maybe the men took center stage, but now I feel that, more and more women writing. What do you think about that? Is it,
I think the globe, I think, is a patriarchal, I think the globe is sort of run by more of the patriarchs. And even though I think it's changing, of course, there were times not too long ago, 100 years ago or 150 years ago, where women couldn't even put their name. If they did write a book or a novel, they couldn't even put their name. They had to use a pseudonym, so I think we have to press forth. I think our voice is different than a man's voice. I think a man's voice is equally important, but I also think that a woman's voice and her experience of living and life and her interpretation of it, I think it's vital that actually gets expressed. Either you write about her or she writes about herself. Either way. And the more that we recognize the strength in a woman's voice, not against a man, but on its own. I think I actually think, I'm going to be a philosopher here, but I actually think that is integral in actually making the world better.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And can you read out a passage from your book? We would love to hear something from your book.
Sure. Let's see. I forgot to mark something, but
Denise says everyone has a story, men and women, and that should be told.
Yes.
And Florence says, yes, women have come a long way. Well,
yes.
And I think because of social media also, I mean, we've been able to amplify our voices. Otherwise, if you're stuck with the traditional media, you wait. And that is also patriarchal in many ways. So if you talk about media, mainstream media, newspapers, even there you'll have a separate section for women.
Yes.
But, incorporating women, yes, and Human says social media has given an opportunity to women writers to come out and talk about their work. Yes, that's true. And
yeah.
So,
and Denise, who's on here right now, she's actually an author of a couple of books herself. So she understands what we're talking about. And the other thing, too, I wanted to throw in there is that hearing about men's stories, not so much, not so much what they do for a living or even if they're authors, but actually finding out their stories. This is something I've been trying to get my husband to do. My husband marched in the civil rights movement in the 60s. And the stories that he was a conscientious objector also of Vietnam War, and the stories that he shared with us. I mean, we keep telling him, please write a book. So even getting men to write their story, I think that would be beautiful.
Yeah, that's true. We need all perspectives, but I think in a patriarchal society, women need to,
Yes.
We need more and more women's voices as well. So let's hear from your passage. Yeah.
Okay, so the ramblings were on Sundays, like I said, and this particular one, and I wrote them out as a list, and they were just thoughts. I didn't contrive them. I didn't plan ahead. I literally sat at my typewriter and typed. So this one is from October 2017, Sunday morning ramblings. Number 1, if you were truly free, what would today look like for you? What would it feel like? Number 2, what is freedom? Is freedom enslavement to an idea or a family or a people or a belief system? If you're in a box and the lid is open, are you able to climb out? 3, Sunday is a day, a perfect and splendid day, 24 hours to engage and laugh and love and enjoy and eat and smile and stretch and giggle and wonder and sleep and share and touch and taste and smell and notice and dream and walk and dance and bend and turn and live, just like all the other days. Number 4, some souls are aching. I used to know them. I used to bring life to them. If their hands were reaching out to me, I would gently take hold and remind them of who they truly are so they could begin to live again. And 5, we recognize our beauty, our heart, our truth. The desire for power is extinguished, and its embers merely light our path instead. It's Sunday, another day to love. Happy Sunday.
Okay.
So can I throw a question out at you, my dear friend?
Yeah, sure.
So what does writing do for you and for your soul when you're in the midst of it?
Well, actually, I won't really call myself a writer. I'm just a reporter. I'm a journalist. I'm a chronicler. And I've been documenting lives of, the men, women, and children of a very underreported region. I would say it's one of the most underreported region of the world. And my whole thing has been to go beyond the obvious, ask those difficult questions, get those stories. And I think, as the book says, that it's a first of its kind account. So I've written a lot of stories about people with disabilities, about water, sanitation, hygiene. How does it affect people's lives? Then apart from reporting hardcore conflict, because the region that I hail from has witnessed decades of violent insurgency and conflict. So how conflict changes lives? Like we grew up seeing conflict, and we've seen it will be very difficult for you to imagine what some people in our part of the life, our part of the world go through. So I think the world is so diverse. It's very important to get, and we journalists, it's a role of us journalists to get those stories and get those stories to people out there. And my media venture, the Thumbprint, is another such initiative where, I have tried to, we call ourselves an international magazine with a northeastern soul, because we are from Northeast India. So we call ourselves an international magazine. So with internet, actually, you can be international sitting anywhere, So that was our thing, We just wanted to tell our stories. So Denise says it's a lot of trauma to deal with. Yes, of course. And the trauma of a journalist, that is something which nobody talks about. The psychological trauma of a journalist, not just the physical safety. The psychological trauma of a journalist is something which nobody talks about. And even the journalists themselves don't talk about it. And so this is where, I would like to maybe read out a passage from my book where I talk about what I had gone through after doing a story for which I still answer court summons. So as a journalist, you can also land up in a legal suit. So this is one story where, I had reported, and then after that, I just read out a passage. The aftermath of my story is a sheaf of official summons that keep coming even after a decade, making me relive that part of my life again and again. When I had to appear like a criminal before the authorities. The impact of the story made me an insomniac. I had nightmares and I became irritable and started screaming at my child. Nothing could make me happy. I started talking to myself. One day when I hit my daughter over a petty matter, my husband decided that I needed counseling. We decided to see a psychiatrist. I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. I started taking antidepressants. The chronological sequence of my trauma makes for a huge learning experience in reporting conflict, which can spring and sprawl surprises on you at every step. In fact, that was the time when I was pregnant. So my friends organized a baby shower for me, but I was too sullen and dull to enjoy it. They seemed disappointed at my behavior. I had to make an effort to smile and be part of the fun. Life seemed listless. Probably my experience would have been different if I had some kind of a support system. Unfortunately, there is none for a journalist in many parts of the world. And this is where, there are certain serious questions about the plight of a journalist reporting conflict that needs to be addressed. What the camera and the story do not tell us is the trail of trauma that lives on the isolated journalist. I realize that nobody ever tries to delve into the life of a journalist who reports from a conflict zone. There is absolutely no support system to deal with physical dangers, legal rigmaroles, and the psychological trauma that the journalist goes through. A hostile environment and first aid training is provided for journalists by the International Women's Media Foundation, along with hands-on experience in reporting regions where safety can be an issue. I wish I had undergone such focused training. our journalism schools are ill-equipped to train fledgling media students on the nuances of conflict reporting before they embark on the field. So this is, and then I just add where, haunted by the unsavory experience of the past, I sometimes wonder where my role as a journalist ends. Where do I go after telling the story? Can I distance myself from the story? Do I have a say in the reconciliation process? Am I a part of the story or just a rank outsider? After all, I have also faced the trauma, psychological, legal, physical. So these are things which, I've tried to address in the book. So the trauma of a journalist, that is something which we don't talk about. And maybe we need healers like you to, well, Denise says that I never thought of it from this perspective. Okay.
Yes.
The world is so diverse. It's like you cannot imagine certain things which are happening to women all over the world. You go to the Middle East, you see a different world. You come to India, you see South Asia, it's a different world. And Florence Hendig says that life is tough for hardcore journalists in the interiors of Northeastern region. Yeah. And Denise says you make
thinking the same thing, Denise. Nothing is happenstance, as they say. So obviously God, the universe, brought us together. As you were talking, I of course am not a journalist. I have not been in war-torn places, but I suffer from anxiety, and I can relate to post-traumatic stress disorder as well, although I've never been diagnosed. But when I was doing my schoolwork for my counseling practice, I literally had every single one of the symptoms of it. So it's interesting how we recognize this through our trauma. So I want to ask you a question. Are there any developing or maybe already coordinated organizations that support the journalist in your country now? Has anything formed over the years for support for that?
No.
No.
Well, there are some networks of women journalists who, I'm part of these networks. So, but then that is not, they are just as a support group. If they have to issue a statement or, help you with getting legal support or, any kind of grievances. But, a proper organization that will help you go through a therapy, that is something which is missing in India. And I don't think there are any in the South. I'm not aware of other South Asian countries if they have it. Because a colleague of mine, she was shot at when she was, while she was entering her office. It was an instance from a state called Arunachal Pradesh, which is close to my state. And she had to undergo post-traumatic stress disorder, and for a year she went to Germany. So there's an organization in Germany which took care of her, and for 1 year it was like a healing process for her. And she told me once in an interview that it's sad that I had to come to Germany. As far as Germany to talk about my life, for a therapy to heal my, to overcome my PTSD. So in that sense, I think we are still primitive when it comes to dealing with the trauma or the life of a journalist. And I think and actually women reporting conflict from this part of the world, especially South Asia, is something new to our generation. So these are new things. So and then with the corporatization of media, it's big money that rules media. So the life of a journalist is rather cheap, So I think that's why we need healers like you. We need counselors like you, maybe.
Yeah.
And maybe we need to read your books, books like your book, so that you feel that there's some kind of succor somewhere. Someone is there to give a healing touch.
Yes.
So women can also heal through writing, and So
Yes.
I think, and women can understand. It's sometimes when you talk about conflict reporting, it's an old boys club. It's very masculine. So when only when you talk to women, you can really open up and say, "Oh, I face this problem," and it's very difficult to talk to your male colleagues about your problems.
Yeah.
So, but I decided to talk about it, and so that the result was bulletproof.
Well, so maybe out of this will be, because I believe that as we write, things become exposed and then people can heal and grow. So perhaps out of bulletproof being out there now in the universe, maybe someone will pioneer something for journalists, some kind of an organization. Even if it just started in your state or started somewhere else, maybe that could dovetail into something that would be available, for men and women, because we don't really think about those behind the scenes aspects, do we?
We don't. And hopefully things will change, but it will take time. And I think our media researchers and media schools also need to look into this, look into it. And can you also show us some of your paintings? I mean, you are also an artist, so maybe I can see something in the background, which is
this is a 4 foot by 4 foot, very large painting, and then the banner my son and I made, Free to Find Pearls. And let's see, I can probably move my camera a bit. And then over, let's see, hanging there, I don't know how to, hanging there, some other paintings. I'm sorry to say, I have not actually painted in a while. I've been painting, doing some home decor stuff. So I've been doing functional painting, not necessarily creative painting in my home. I love art.
What does art do to you? I mean, why do you paint? What is it? Is it healing? Is it therapeutic? What is art to you?
I think it's another expression of who I am. And I used to go to art shows when I was much younger. I'm 56 now. And when I was much younger, I used to go to art shows, and I used to think, oh, I'm a painter. But I never had a brush in my hand. I never had a canvas. And I met my husband, and he said, one year, I'm buying you canvases, I'm buying you